I said, AJ, they want you to get in a ring after. And he said, what for? I said, well, obviously, it's the moment, isn't it? And he's like, I said, they want to announce the fight. And he goes, yeah, we haven't agreed the fight yet. We're live?
Not live.
No, okay.
We can do it live if you want. Eddie Hearn, welcome back. Thank you once again for having me
No problem.
at one of
Thanks
your
for
media.
coming.
Listen, I love them. Great presentation. Good for the local fighters as well. Let's start off there. The opportunities that you give them. One of the things that there was a cloud, you know, with Morrell Smith Morrell not happening anymore. Is he going to pull the card? Those guys were grateful sat on that stage that you kept this card running.
Yeah, that's nice. Like, I think when that happens, it's like the worst call or worst bit of news you can get. So we got a WhatsApp group called Global Fights, and it's basically everybody that's involved in making the fights. Everyone's in that. And it's like, comes through, and you're like running around, and it goes, Callum Smith's out injured. And you're like, oh my God. And then, you know, you've done like, I don't know, 7,000 tickets. You have to offer refunds to everybody. And then, like, it's such a mess. And it's like, and then obviously DAZN were paying for Smith Morrell, and now, I mean, luckily it was Whitaker, because Whitaker does big numbers, and, you know, but still, it's not Smith Morrell, you know. And you need a supportive broadcaster, you need a sort of fluid broadcaster that can say, look, we were spending that, let's move a bit of money here, let's do that, but let's keep the show on. Then I say to Frank Smith, come on, show me what a mess this is. Like, show me the budget, show me the bottom line. You go down the bottom and you go, and he says, if we keep this show on, this is what it looks like. And you go, fuck. Like that. And to be fair, like, Frank's really good at sort of, you know, we do this, we can move this here, we can move this here. And obviously Ben was due to fight an easier fight, a run-out fight, 10 rounds. And then we had to go back to Ben and say, look, we can't do you against that opponent, but will you fight Suarez and we'll headline it? And he's like, and obviously, you know, they saw his fight with Lyndon Arthur, they know he's a big puncher, but, you know, it's a fight that they're confident of winning. So they accept that, and then we keep everyone on. And it feels good to see guys thankful and like excited, because, you know, like, especially Molly. I mean, if Molly weren't on, I'm not saying we wouldn't have done the fight, but it was a big thing, because I knew what it meant to Molly. I knew that Jamie Webster was performing, he was doing a set, he was performing a ring walk, like, and it's like, I really don't like letting people down. I think I've cancelled one show in nearly 20 years of promoting that fell through, so I've got a track record of not doing it. And it's also like, although it's expensive, it's really good, I guess, reputational marketing for us to say we don't do that. So as a fighter, you know, you don't go through 10 weeks of training, spend your money and not fight and not get paid, and then have to wait again for another 3 or 4 months. So, and that's a big thing. So yeah, all in all, really glad we did. I think it's a good little card, and I love Liverpool, and I think it'll be a good night.
What I want to ask you about, and I did speak to Frank Smith about this, but I want your voice. When that fight fell through, I thought, oh, are we going to get Ben Whitaker versus David Morrell Jr.? A fight that I've thought about for years, spoke about, that's a fight that's going to happen. Only because I spoke to Matchroom, spoke to Frank, and he was saying, you know, I believe in Pat Brown, and I believe that Pat Brown could beat Joe Apataya in the 12 months. Massive risk. So I thought, oh, are they going to do the same thing with Ben Whitaker? Make him take that risk? But then you announced Suarez.
Yeah. It never came into my mind, to be honest with you. No, because you see, if you fight a fighter like that in Morrell, one, you got to be ready to fight him. But two, what you can't do is, with 10 days to go, just say to Andy Lee, by the way, you're now fighting Morrell. Like, if you needed the money, if you didn't have the potential, I think there is a situation where I might say to that fighter, like, if it wasn't Ben Whitaker, say it was a guy, I don't know, and I don't mean this disrespectful, but say it was a British light heavyweight who was up for a big fight and, like, but wasn't, you know, lost a few times, and it was a payday for them to jump in fit to fight Morrell, I might have said something. But when you've got someone like Ben Whitaker, we're not going to throw away his potential And I think he can beat Morrell, but it's a very dangerous fight at this stage in his career on 10 days' notice against a style you haven't trained for. It's just, it would be madness. So I never even thought about it. But then when Morrell called it out, I was like, oh shit, yeah. I mean, we wouldn't have done it anyway, but I didn't really expect Morrell to sort of say, yeah, I'll fight him instead. But they did that. Never an option. Never an option, because one, and I don't mind being transparent with Ben Whitaker's plan, because I think that's a good thing to do with fans, especially when I rate him so highly. I think he has so much potential. We just need this year to get ourselves ready for those guys. And when I say this year, I actually mean this 3-fight process of Brian Suarez on Saturday, the Boots undercard in June, and then a big fight in Birmingham, August, September time. And then once we've done that, we'll be ready for those kind of guys. But he's special. Do you know what I mean? Like, one, he's a special talent. Two, he's a huge personality, rates unbelievably well. He's got a great digital and social footprint and presence. We just got to get it right, and we will. And Andy Lee will get it right. He's a phenomenal trainer. So, yeah, I expect a good fight, quite a dangerous fight, but I think Ben will look fantastic.
When you talk about Pat Brown and how you're building him quite quickly,
yeah.
Great fight he had the other week, by the way. Very enjoyable with Dukar, tough, resilient. And then I think, wow, him potentially calling out Jai Opetaia sooner than I thought. 6 fights in, 7 fights in. What makes you confident to take that risk with Pat Brown?
Firstly, I think Pat Brown's a huge puncher. I think he's the biggest puncher in the division. So straight away, you like your chances in a, sometimes you call out a fighter like Jai, who's a phenomenal fighter. Like, you've got to be looking at the biggest fights in the division. Right now, I know Zerdo's a big name, but Jai is, I know he's not a world champion anymore, but he's still one of the best in the division, right? So you've got to be shooting for those guys. And I believe that Pat Brown can beat everybody in the division. Now, I also believe, and I'll be honest enough to say, the fight against Dukar was a really good round banking experience, right? Did he show things in that fight that told me he beats Jai Opetaia now? Maybe not. But I know how good he is, and I know his potential. So, like, the difference is, when we said about Whitaker and Morrell, if you gave Pat Brown 12 weeks to get ready for Jai Opetaia, you make that decision and you're all in. What you don't do is Pat Brown's training for another fight against Dukar, and then Jai Opetaia's available in 2 weeks, and go, right, you up for that, Pat? He goes, whoa, if you're going to put me in there, I need a proper camp. So, yeah, we've got loads of fighters with so much potential, but you got to allow them to learn and be ready when you throw them in. And especially the ones with commercial potential, like Pat, like Ben particularly, you're just not going to get it wrong. And we know what we're doing. We're very good at that. So you've got to trust us and trust the process.
We like that. Saturday night with Tyson Fury versus Matt Madoff. And I am aware you will be repeating yourself. But what I wanted to say to you personally is I like what you and Anthony Joshua did when it was like get in the ring.
Yeah.
You stood up, sort of looked into the ring, looked back at Joshua, stood your ground, and Joshua sat there and said what he said. Was that pre-planned, or was that
No,
what
I've got to be honest with
anyway?
you. I've got to give props to AJ, because it was a very, very awkward and high-pressured situation, right? So earlier on the night we met, I met with Turkey Al-Sheikh and the Netflix guys, and they were saying, look, after the fight, AJ's going to get in through this corner, and then you're going to come together and we're going to announce the fight. I'm like, no. I said, the fight's not... Yeah, but it's going to happen, isn't it? I said, yeah, but I believe it will happen, but we can't... It's a bit awkward to announce a fight that's not done. I said, look, let's see what happens during the fight, and then we'll make a decision. So, and this was all on TV, because everyone was texting me saying, look, they come over to me in about the 5th or 6th round and say, right, all right, AJ get in the ring? So I'm like, all right, give me a minute. I said, AJ, they want you to get in the ring after. And he said, what for? I said, well, obviously, it's the moment, isn't it? And he's like, I said, they want to announce the fight. And he goes, we haven't agreed the fight yet. I said, I know, but obviously it's Turkey, like that. You got 50,000 people here, whatever, like. And he goes, no. He said, I'm not getting in and telling people it's done when it's not done. And I'm like, because I'm thinking I've got to tell them, right? And I probably would have gone along with it, if I'm honest. and that's being really honest. But I was like that in two minds. And I said, like, normally he would say to me, what do you think? And all I said to him was, like, obviously, if you get in there, there is going to be a lot of leverage that we have that the fight's not done. So, but at the same time, there's pressure on us because we've announced the fight and we actually haven't, and now we've got to go and sign a contract. So he was like, no. I'm like, okay, I think, good call. Now I've got to tell them. And I'm like, okay, he's not going to get in the ring. What do you mean? I said, like, we haven't done a deal yet, so he's not getting in the ring. Yes, but this is like, you know, I was like, I'm sorry, like, no. Anyway, they come back, asked me a couple of rounds later. I said, no. I said, well, you have to tell His Excellency. I said, I will. Just took to His Excellency, says he's not getting in the ring. It's like, good. So I was like, shit. So, but he said, then they come over to me. They said, look, well, he might go over to him and shout at him. I said, he can do whatever he wants, but we're not saying it's done when it's not done. Okay. So, and then that all unfolded. But I texted AJ the day after. I said, well done. I said, because you made a great decision there. And he made a very honest decision where given, I mean, people are also quick to forget what happened to him, what he's been through, all this kind of stuff. But listen, he was there. So he's putting himself in the cauldron. So I get it. But we've also, you know, he won't sign, he won't come back until he's ready. And he'll be ready. But at the same time, like, people are very impatient because obviously they want to see it. I get it, but it will happen.
One final question, because I know you've got to go. For the thicko that I am, I've heard you mention in a couple of interviews something called the investor call. Investor call, yeah. Please explain that to me and why it's imperative in boxing that we understand what it is.
I mean, it's not really in boxing, but basically when you have a stock listed company, right, like TKO, for example, the executives or the lead executive will give regular call updates to investors and to the public, really. And so you know, you need to know information about the company as an investor in that business, and that's the part of being a publicly traded company where people have that information. So when I refer to that, and that is kind of like, that's gospel. So what you can't do is you can't go on there and start going, yeah, what we're doing at the moment, we've got this deal coming up, this deal, trying to drive the stock price up and the interest up in the business. You've got to give true and honest reports regarding the status and the performance of the company. So that was just, when you hear me talking about that, that was where TKO was saying, yeah, well, we haven't paid Conor Benn 15 million, Turk El Sheikh paid him 15 million, which is, we find out, is actually not completely true. And then also they say, well, we're promoting the Fury fight, and they weren't promoting the Fury fight and they were never involved in the Fury fight. So it's like, I don't understand how you can say that in that environment, but I don't know. I'm learning as I go. That's a new world for me. We'll be there one day, but you know, maybe the world's not what it seems.
Yeah, we'll and I'm going to leave it there. But thank you so much for answering that. I'll see you in Birmingham. Hopefully we can have a catch-up.
Absolutely.
But once again, a pleasure to speak to you. Ladies and gentlemen, Eddie Hearn.
Thank you.